A very good afternoon to you and welcome to the Inside Pass, News 24's dedicated rugby podcast. I'm Simnikiwe Xabanisa and today we're looking ahead to the Springboks Rugby Championship clash against Argentina in Durban and ask the question, will lightning strike twice for the visitors at Kings Park? Argentina's only win in South Africa was achieved in Durban 10 years ago, and then a rugby championship in which all four of the teams have managed wins away from home. Could Felipe Contempomi's team do it again? Joining me to answer that question, our News 24 sports editor, Lloyd Burnard, who's been in Durban all week and fresh from bringing us that record win over the All Blacks in Wellington, senior sports writer Khanyiso Tshwaku. Today's proceedings are a little different in that you get to see our ugly mugs in a webinar format, but I'm sure my two guests' insights will be no less incisive. Gentlemen, good morning. Oh, good afternoon. I keep saying good morning because this is usually at 11 o'clock in the morning. How are you guys doing?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good,
I hate to say the fact that on the 8th of August 2015, I happened to be at Kings Park.
Katie, I was there as well, and I it's one of those games that you just don't forget, you know. Juan Imhoff, the hat trick, Heineke Meyer apologizing to the nation. Afterwards, it was just one of those test matches that stays with you.
For the first time of many, unfortunately. Well,
but it's just a real second test.
I would have to apologize. Let me not get on poor Heineke's case. In this case. Guys, I'm gonna start at the end and sort of work our way forward. The end being the developing news this morning that the Boks have lost Oxenchair to injury. And then Brassie deciding to replace him with Boan Fenter in the starting lineup. But the real sort of tricky bit comes in on the bench where Jan-Hendrik Wessels was supposed to be the hooker. But now what's happened is suddenly we're looking at, Jan-Hendrik going to loosehead prop replacement. And then Marco van Staden, remember him playing at hooker, actually moves to the front row, well, comes out of the 23 and into the front row. First things first, obviously, Lloyd, you're the guy on the ground. What do you make of the changes? Is that a bit hectically sort of disruptive?
Look, I suppose it's always going to be disruptive. I don't think any team in preparation for a test match, wants this kind of thing happening at such a late stage on the eve of the game. It does make for an interesting dynamic, but it is so very rusty, as we've seen. We'll remember the 2023 World Cup and the hookers and the guys who were makeshift hookers. Even in the final, you had Dion Free playing the bulk of that game at hooker. Marco van Staden played a bit of hooker at the World Cup. So not completely unfamiliar territory for Marco van Staden, but is it ideal? Absolutely not. I think it's particularly disappointing for Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Not, he still gets a game, but I think this was a nice opportunity for him to kind of show what he can do at hooker, and he probably isn't going to get that opportunity now. I guess you just look for Marks to go deep into the game as much as he can. Is it ideal? No. Is it an absolute catastrophe? No, I don't think so either.
I had a quiet chat with Trucks before this, and he's got an alternative theory about what might actually end up happening, because I was saying to him, listen, I've seen Marco van Staden throw into the lineout, and all he's ever done was basically, like front ball. And basically, he was just handing it to the guy instead of actually throwing it to him, just to make sure that, no mistake took place. Now, my question is, Trucks, your alternative theory is that actually Marco might not have to throw in the game at all. Talk us through that.
Not at all. Jan-Hendrik Wessels, as to use your words, cleaned up Marco Marks' mess at Auckland. And what he did so well was finding the back ball that is quite difficult for someone who's not a specialist hooker in the form of a Marco van Staden. Marco van Staden, as you correctly put it, is a front ball person. It's just a basic throw. But what that does, it effectively cuts out the middle and the line and the back ball options, which are so critical for the Tony ball form of attack, where you're attacking from the back ball. What Jan-Hendrik did so well in Auckland was that while Marco couldn't find his jumpers front, middle, and back, Jan-Hendrik was finding the jumpers at the back and found them with unerring accuracy. So I think the key part is just to keep the scrumming strength on the side of the scrum with Jan-Hendrik Wessels, but also ensuring that he does the bulk of the throwing, while Marco van Staden's power as just a human being will be used in the scrum as a scrumming hooker, whereas the line of responsibilities will probably lie with Jan-Hendrik Wessels.
But now, guys, here's an uncomfortable background if you're a Springbok fan. We've gone through a season in which the lineout's been a bit of a lottery. It doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter if we were playing against Italy, it doesn't matter if we were playing against Georgia, it doesn't matter who we've played against. It's been a bit of a lottery this year. So I get the genius of Rassie trying to have. I get the genius of Rassie sort of thinking, okay, it's fine. You'll use a prop to throw in. I mean, he has used a wing to throw in before, so it's fair enough. But now the question for me becomes, does that not sort of erode an already sort of, for want of a better word, weak sort of aspect of the Boks' play, Lloyd?
Yeah. The simple truth is that the Springboks need their set piece to work all the time, and it doesn't matter whether they're playing kind of the older traditional style that we are so used to. And as Tshwaku said, if they're going to be attacking quickly off the top of lineouts, then you need to be equally accurate there. So whether they're setting up a more or if they're trying to play quickly off the top, that lineout simply has to function. It is an area that hasn't worked consistently the whole season. There have been little patches where it looks like it's coming right, and then a substitution here and there, and a couple throws go awry. So absolutely, I think whoever it is, and I agree. I think the Jan-Hendrik Wessels option is probably what they're going to go for on the weekend trucks. But I think that starting kind of 60 minutes before we get to that, they've really got to, set the platform early on in the game on Saturday and kind of put together a clinical performance set piece. Probably the whole season so far, there've been patches of the Boks being absolutely brilliant across the board. And then also these patches where it just, kind of feels a bit hit and miss. And I think obviously the result's important tomorrow, but I think equally important is them having that full clinical 80-minute performance, and the line out and the set pieces is a huge part of it.
You guys have both sort of touched on Durban 10 years ago, what happened, with the, with Argentina and the Boks. Lloyd, you sort of, you from KZN, Trucks, you spent a significant amount of your working career in Durban. Question, boys, what is it with Kings Park? Because I had a quick look at my stats, and apparently the Springboks winning percentage there is 61.1%, which it doesn't matter how you want to look at it, isn't great. So it's not a happy hunting ground for the Boks. Now, I want to ask both of you, probably starting with Trucks, what is it about Durban that doesn't give that Ellis Park vibe, if I want to, for want of a way to describe it, a better way to describe it?
Sea level, first and foremost, the lack of altitude. That's the first part. I mean, even Cape Town is not the happiest of hunting grounds for the Boks. Gqeberha is different for reasons known to that particular part of the world. The Boks are actually very good in Gqeberha, but Durban and Cape Town, I think it could work with the fact that the cities are much more hospitable from a weather perspective for visitors. I mean, Durban also has the heat and the humidity that just makes rugby quite uncomfortable at times. Cape Town, generally it's offered the wet weather, especially in the winter months. That often brings the opposition back into play. So I think sea level is a bigger differential, because if you look at South Africa's record in Bloem, you look at South Africa's record in Pretoria, you look at South Africa's record in Johannesburg and in Mbombela, it pales significantly into insignificance when you compare with what happens with the Boks in Durban and Cape Town. So I'm inclined to think that sea level actually equals out the contest for visiting teams. I mean, if you look at Australia's record in Durban and in Cape Town since 1992, those are grounds where they're actually very much comfortable playing. They won in Cape Town in 1992. They won in Durban in 2000, in 2009 and 2011 before they won at Ellis Park again. So just sea level tends to level out things for the Boks.
Yeah, and it's been a talking point this week, guys. I mean, Tony Brown was talking a little bit about it on Monday, and Andre Esterhuizen as well. It's slippery. It's the humidity means that even if it doesn't rain, it's often difficult to handle. The ball. It's slippery underfoot, and it's difficult to control the ball because of the humidity. Now, of course, that affects both sides. It's not something that only South Africa has to deal with. But I think you see it with the Sharks time and time again. The Sharks are probably have been one of the most frustrating teams to watch over the last few seasons because they've got all the star power and all of these incredible backs, and the handling errors, are common. So I think that's a factor. But I guess it's just one of those things as well. I mean, it's you couldn't call it a bogey ground. I think the record is still positive, but 61% you would expect a bit better than that. But it is an interesting one of those things, I guess. But it's dry now. Today's the sunniest day that we've had in Durban this week. I know there are some concerns of some rain around tomorrow. But I think if we get kind of what we have today, a nice late winter's day, the humidity is not too bad today. Hopefully it dishes up something similar. Kind of 5 o'clock tomorrow.
Lloyd, just to stay with you, just looking at Rassie's team for this week, this is the undisrupted team. Rassie named a team that was disrupted only by injuries, in that epic against the All Blacks in Wellington, a fortnight ago. The only changes he made to that team, and we were wondering, obviously because particularly the backline was such a young backline, such a vibrant backline, and everyone was kind of like trying to work out, well, is he going to go with more experience again? Rassie basically only made minimalist changes, which is not something he normally does. He kind of left the team as it was, except for, as it was affected by injury. What did you make of what that sort of squad announcement actually meant? I don't know, almost like in the big picture of the Springboks.
Yeah, I loved it. A bit of consistency for the first time this year. And I guess, when you look at those last 40 minutes in Wellington, how could you? It was one of those where, who can you leave out from that? I mean, one of the great Bok performances of all time. And if you're a part of that and you've delivered, particularly to the back line, then those guys had to be rewarded again. The one talking point, obviously, was Manie Lebok, because he had such a fantastic 60 minutes at Wellington, one of his best games in a Bok jersey, and kind of created everything. And he was just superb. So very unlucky to be left out for this weekend. But, it's not like Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu did anything wrong in Wellington. He got a head knock, and for 20 minutes, he was very good as well. So I think it's great. I think I think they're getting closer to, and I don't want to say their best team. Rassie said yesterday, or on Tuesday, rather, that they like the fact that they don't know what their best team is. They said they're not ashamed of that. It's a good thing that they don't know what their best team is, because it means that the guys are pushing each other so hard all the time. He used the fly halves as a particular example, genuinely believing that there's so little to separate those three guys, that it's about picking what he thinks will work on the day. So I think it's a great team. I love that Ethan Hook is getting backed again. He looks a serious international prospect, and I like that Damien Willemse gets another game, just showing his flexibility and versatility again. I mean, brilliant at 12 and 15 in Wellington, and the interesting reasoning for the selection at 12 in Wellington that Rassie spoke about was that Damien had been a bit out of form and low on confidence pretty much the whole year, and by playing him at number 12, they got him closer to the ball. It would mean that he would get on the ball more than he would standing at fullback. You've got a low confidence fullback kind of standing back there, getting minimal touches, doesn't really aid you playing yourself back into form. Whereas at 12, he was able to do that. So he, in the game, seemingly is now full of belief and form again. So I think it's just a very exciting team. I love the balance. You've still got that power and that muscle up front, which you're always going to need. It's that kind of traditional Springbok engine, which you want. But what's happening from 9 to 15 at the moment is very exciting.
Trucks, I keep hearing that, from Rassie, that he likes the idea that I think actually he likes it more that we don't know what he's going to do next in terms of selecting his team. But I grew up in, and I might be aging myself, but I grew up in an age where, like, if you had a team that was dominating or that was winning things and dominating things, that team, anyone could name, your starting lineup. We are officially in a place where we couldn't do that with the Boks, but obviously they're still winning. What do you make of it? I mean, is that a simple case of rugby having moved on, or is that a simple case of us just having that level of depth?
It's a three-way thing. It's, yes, rugby moving on. Two, the level of depth. Three, putting players on notice, along with the changes in sports science. The rugby players are playing a lot more rugby now than they did 10, 20 years ago. So already there are demands on the players' bodies that are unprecedented. I think, secondly, it's very important for coaches to look at the bigger picture and understand that you want to be the best team now, but how are you going to look like in 2 years' time? Because the one thing that you want to avoid is to avoid what's happened with Ireland, where the team grows all together. The similar thing with the All Blacks leading into 2019, where the team grew all together. So you want to freshen up things significantly, and also look at the bigger picture in that. I mean, you've mentioned the hookers in example, the hooker position. It has been a position of some concern, because a player like Bongimbo Nambi, who at 34 does become a minimalist prospect going into 2027, but also he hasn't shown the kind of form that makes him a sure starter. You could say the same of a Malcolm Marx pre Wellington, where you'd find that there are particular positions within the team that require players to be put on notice. You saw that Eben has been playing very well for the Boks, but you would have seen Lloyd Diacha's cameo before he came off with that knee knock. Then Ergie Snyman decided to put his stamp of authority as a number 4 lock, and all of a sudden the youngest lock in the group is now asking everyone questions. And then you have an Ergie Ruan Nokia doing Victor Matfield things, stealing ball that the All Blacks ideally would be taking. So what you ideally want, that you do want a particular spine of players to look after the here and now, but you also want to build a wider group. And I think it just becomes a case of, when does Rassie settle on what is his best 30? I think the key part now, over a 4-year developmental plan, because it's become very clear now, even though the Northern Hemisphere is panting the Six Nations as the best tournament in the world, it's a bit of a blue line, because all of those nations want to win the World Cup. And I can tell you right now what France are doing by sending second string teams on Southern Hemisphere tours. They want to keep their playing powder dry for not just the Six Nations, but to ensure when a World Cup cycle comes round, their best group of 30 players alongside a group of, let's say, another 10 to 20 is actually fit and ready for a World Cup assault.
Lloyd, speaking of teams that nobody knows what they're going to read, like Argentina named their team last night. I think you were there, so I might want to ask you. The things that stuck out for me was the fact that the Boks have gone with a 5-3 split, as has become the tradition sort of in recent weeks, whereas Argentina have gone 6-2. Not only have they gone 6-2, but the other thing they've done that sort of catches the eye is the return of fly-off Albornoz, albeit via the bench. What do you make of what Contempomi is trying to do in this match?
Guys, they are strong. Hey, I mean, we know this. We've watched them all year. I always go back to that first half of the game where they beat the All Blacks, and I think it was 13-all at halftime. But we're just watching them for that half was just incredible rugby. Rassie used the word that kind of was the one I've kind of been searching for in my mind with him, and he called them bouncy, and that's what they like. They've got this kind of sevens background in a few of their players. They're just taking the ball with such pace and intensity, and then in contact, they've got the physicality, but they also have this like bounciness, this bounceability where they can kind of just bounce off a tackle and spin around and keep the ball moving. So the ball is just alive at serious pace so much in their attack. And I think that's what makes them a real threat, because it's one thing going out and looking to play with that fast pace, but you need the accuracy to pull it off. And I think that's what they've got at the moment. They've got guys that are running on, taking the ball at serious speed. but the handling is there to back it up, and then the offloading follows, and the kind of work being done in contact and around the ground is very neat, very tidy, and very quick. So I think they're very dangerous. And we know the stats. They've beaten the British Lions, they've beaten the All Blacks, they've beaten Australia this year. So there's a bit of depth being built in that squad as well. And I think 6 forwards again speaks to how much they're asking of their forwards at the moment, because a lot of that game is built around that kind of contact point. And you talk about emptying the tank, and that's what those guys have been doing. So, no, I don't think anyone's under any illusions. I think you're up against a very serious, skilled opposition on the weekend.
Chucks, this brings me to the next question. This rugby championship, all along, every team has won an away game, which is kind of unusual. It's not always how it works. Every team has won an away game. Argentina have experience of winning in Durban. The Boks might still kind of be buzzing from having put a record 43-10 score on the All Blacks in New Zealand. Could we be sort of like, is that a perfect sort of cocktail for a bit of an ambush by Argentina?
Theoretically, it is, but just harking back to what Rassie said post the 43-10 in Wellington, was that it's a game that they'll celebrate at that point in time, but they need to then refocus, because Argentina is a blue and white booby trap, a serious blue and white booby trap. I mean, even in the game that they lost in quarter but to the All Blacks, there were portions in the game where you felt that if Argentina just tightened up on their defense, especially in the maul defense, they could have caused All Blacks problems. And the cute part about the game in Sydney was that all they needed to do in that game was just tighten up their discipline and their defensive discipline in the last 10 minutes, because Australia have tended to be a very strong side at the back end of a game. So I think the key part for the Boks, they would have looked at this game. I think had that game taken place a week after Wellington, I wouldn't be surprised if the Boks have lost, but they would have had a weekend and let's say two or 3 days to quench the success of Wellington. However, though, Argentina aren't a team where you can just sneeze and think that your cold will carry through. If you sneeze against Argentina, they've got a very big surprise in terms of catching a flu against them. So look, I mean, Argentina have showed not just the British and Irish Lions game is probably the perfect example of how Argentina actually know when and how to show up for very big games. And then in beating Australia in Australia, they beat New Zealand last year. They know how to win in South Africa. And also looking at the fact that a lot of the players come from a Jaguares setup, and the Jaguares, especially towards the back end of Super Rugby, found some success, especially in Durban.
Lloyd, obviously, as the man on the ground, you were there last year, and the team that the Boks are playing against was Ireland, and I remember watching it on TV and thinking, geez, Durban's turned up for this, because it was, the vibe was actually every bit as electric as it was at Loftus the week before when the two sides met. What's your feeling of what's your sense of how Durban's taking this game?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm obviously a bit biased. It feels like I'm back home here. Something in the air as soon as you land in Natal, just makes me feel like I'm home. So I'm always gonna punt Kings Park a bit. But I mean, the work they've done in and around that stadium is really good. I mean, it's looking great. And with all of the kind of space they have on the outer fields for the braais and the live music and the kids playing rugby and everything. I mean, there's nothing else like that in South Africa. It really is a spectacular venue. So, I mean, Durban does get up for test matches. Look, I don't have ticket sales updates. Just safe to say that the word earlier in the week is that they were heading close to sold out. I mean, I would expect to see a few little gaps here and there as we have throughout the home season, but no, it'll be big. I mean, there's no better way to spend a Saturday. I mean, you get there at lunchtime, get the braais out, a drink or two, and then it's just hopping a few meters across and into the stadium for the game. So I was at that Ireland game last year. I mean, what a test match that was as well. I mean, at that time, I think it was pretty much 1 and 2 in the world or close to it. And that was, I think, a last minute drop goal. And that was the game that Sasha had to play like 77 minutes at fullback because he came on for the injury. So yeah, I mean, there've been some good ones over the years. I mean, I was here when we won the Tri-Nations. Trucks, you can tell me what year was that John Smith lifted the trophy at Kings Park.
Would it be
Was it like
2004?
I think 4? Yeah, 2004.
Yeah, 2004. That was Jake's first, and then obviously the second one was in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was just
it's a special
my
place.
age.
It really is. It's a special place, and love coming here, and hopefully it's pretty close to packed tomorrow.
Lloyd, another sort of how do I call it? Almost like a mentality question. Does the fact that Argentina is almost, Argentina's almost, they've decided to play Twickenham the week after this. Does that give the Boks a weird sort of unnecessary sort of way out in the back of their heads that if they lose this, they're not going to, some place in Argentina that's hotter than Satan's bum, as was the case, last year. I mean, that place was just looked nasty to be in. So, I mean, does that give them sort of like an inadvertent sort of way out in their heads that, what, even if we lose here, we could always go to Twickenham where all the experts will be and we can still kind of like get the job done there?
I don't think so, and for two reasons. A, I think any complacency that this Boks team might have had in it died at Ellis Park. After 20 minutes when they were 22-0 up and they still found a way to lose that game. I don't think anything is taken for granted after that. So I think the quality of the opposition that they have both tomorrow in Durban and next week at Twickenham is strong enough where they know that they're going to have to be at their very best to get a result. And then the other factor is that, New Zealand could very easily go and beat the Wallabies twice. And if that happens, then one slip up from the Boks and it's all over. So I think there's just too much on the line, too much to play for. And I think, given the Ellis Park slip up and given the quality of the Pumas, I think when you factor in all of those things, I think they're going to be pretty on it. I mean, that's my suspicion. And I wrote about it in my column this morning. I got a bit of grief from some of our readers because it was sounding like I was painting this picture of a Boks landslide victory, and that wasn't really the point I was trying to make. I don't think it's going to be necessarily on the scoreboard that they're going to just score 10 tries and win 70-0. I think they're when I say they're on the verge of clicking, I feel like they're on the verge of clicking with this philosophy, with getting the balance right and the gel right between the forwards and the backs and they're still going to kick their threes. If they get their penalty and it's 30 out and it's early in the game and the game's on the line, they're going to kick their threes. They're still going to put the ball up. They're still going to back their set piece. It's not about that. I'm not saying that they're on the verge of becoming this, former All Black side that can just attack and clean guys off from everywhere. But I think they're on the verge of like this game style starting to evolve into something that becomes more dependable and more consistent. And I think that's a huge factor for them at the moment as well. So no, I mean, I've got them to win, but I don't think it'll be a landslide. I think the opposition's too good, and I think the performance hopefully will be something closer to 80 minutes of solid, consistent, good rugby.
All right. I had ambitions of talking to you guys about the URC, which starts today, and obviously the Women's Rugby World Cup final, but they are sort of waving me out of here because I spent, I think, the first 2 minutes staring into space because I'm not used to this webinar business. So, listen, guys.
Have we bored them already?
Well, it's rugby. But guys, thank you so much for your time and obviously your insights and expertise. And to you watching out there, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciated it. Good afternoon.
Cheers, guys.